Hi everyone, so I am back today with a TSA video. This one is looking at the 2022 paper. Before we get into that, I just want to say that I will be posting a couple of updated videos, general advice about the parcel statements, about UCAS. I'm very aware it's application season right now. If you do have any specific videos that would be helpful for you that you would like to see, then please do leave a comment. I do read all of them, and usually I will either make a video or at least get back to you in the comment section. So if you've got any personal advice that you're needing, please do feel free to leave a comment. Before we get into the actual video, I just want to make a quick announcement about a platform that I've been developing over the past few months. Now, what this platform is built for you guys at A-level and eventually for you guys at GCSE. It will become useful as well. I'm not going to talk too much about the bulk of it right now, but I will just say where it's come from. So I have developed this idea. Obviously, I went through the GCSE A-level track, same as you guys are going through now. I then went on to study economics and management at Oxford. And then following that, as soon as I graduated, essentially, I basically founded an A-level college. So I've been working with students and applications and, sending them off to universities for quite a number of years now. And one of the things that's become really evident is this kind of lack of a place for you guys to know where all your resources can be found in one place from a sort of trusted source. There's loads of great things out there, and if you go looking for them, then you can put together a pretty good set of resources that will get you through GCSE A-level and whatever else. But I think that hopefully through this platform, it's for you guys who you've got all this motivation, you've got all this energy, but you're not necessarily sure if the information that you are revising is actually correct, if it's relevant for your course. Other things like being able to access help from teachers that you know and trust, people who can kind of follow alongside you on the application journey, being able to access or talk to other students who maybe are applying for the same courses at the same universities, because it can be really isolating when you're the only person who's going for a particular course and you just don't know who else to talk to. I know that was my personal experience applying for E&M back many years ago. I didn't really have anybody else to discuss it with because I was the only person applying for economics in general. So that can be quite isolating, and you also just don't know if you're on the right track. So all of these things combined of just being able to kind of confidently go into your GCSE or A-level year knowing I'm going to know exactly what I need to be doing at every single point of the way. And when there is something that I'm stuck on, or when there is something that I need or some advice that I need, I know exactly where I can find it, where to access it. So that's essentially the crux of the platform. At this early stage, what I am going to be doing is I'm going to be leaving a pre-sign up link in the description box. What I'd really appreciate from you guys is if you'd be willing to go ahead and just pop your email into that link. We'll then be sending you through a link to the platform when it becomes available in the next couple of weeks. So for this early group, just essentially looking for as much feedback as possible. If you guys can use the site, see if it's useful, and just tell us what you think, essentially. It is free, so please don't worry about that. And as an extra sort of thing that I want to offer for you guys who give up your time to go ahead and do that, is we're going to be organizing a number of these kind of smaller group classes. And so hopefully what we can do is study a bit of some of the TSA questions and go through exam techniques and give you some more personal advice. I also will be setting up consultation sessions if you want to go through a personal statement, or you just need to kind of set it up. You haven't started it yet, you don't know what to do. Other admissions exams will be run by the other teachers, and there's just going to be a number of different slots for you guys to be able to come in and get some advice if you want it. So please do sign up if you can and register your interest, and we'll be sending a schedule out to you guys very soon. I think that's it for now, so I'm just going to get into the first of the videos, which is TSA 2022 questions 1 to 10. Going to start off with some essential advice. So for today, I just want to start off with the first 10 questions of the TSA. Before we get into it, I've posted quite a lot of other videos covering different question types, covering strategies, timing, and how to do really well in this exam. If you are coming into this fresh, or even if you have seen those videos, I just want to repeat and make one thing super clear for you. And it is my number one piece of advice for the TSA. I think I've mentioned it a lot of times before, but this is just the one thing to get into your head. And that one thing is that there are no original questions in the TSA. Then it's not an exam where it's designed to test your creativity and thinking on the spot. And I think that isn't clear for a lot of you guys. You think that it's almost sort of an intelligence test, and I would completely disagree with that. It is really no different than when you walk into a maths exam, you look at a question and you immediately recognize from the wording and the question type, right, this is a question I'm solving by using integration by parts. you walk into an economics exam, you look at an essay title and you think, right, this is a question that wants me to use an externality diagram and evaluate using XYZ. So the TSA is exactly the same in terms of being just a standardized exam with a preset answer that they want from you and a method that they kind of expect you to use. So once you get that kind of clear in your head, what you'll start noticing is that for each question, and I'm not just talking about the broader categories of question, as in the floor type and the whatever type and the, the kind of problem solving type, I mean specific questions. So for a floor type, but it is looking at one particular type of floor, or it's a main conclusion, but it's the same kind of conclusion, what you'll see is that they just repeat themselves over and over and over again. So the only real way to do well in this exam, which has such limited time for a large number of questions, is to absolutely nail looking at a question, taking kind of 2 seconds to identify what method it wants you to use, how it wants you to solve this question, what answer they're looking for, and then just to solve it. The only way to do that is obviously to go through every single question, make sure you understand how to answer the 50 or so types of questions that will come up, and then just memorize it. And if you just memorize the language, it's going to be the same thing. They switch out the topic maybe one time it's talking about zoos, and in another time it's talking about, I don't know, crossing roads or whatever, but the topic may change, but you will find that these questions are basically identical. So if you do go through and perfectly categorize all these questions, understand them, and memorize, I think beyond kind of exam panic or, just feeling stressed in the moment, there's just no reason, just like any other A-level GCSE exam, that you shouldn't honestly be getting just full marks. And that's why some kids do get those scores. And obviously, if you practice this enough, you will just kind of quite easily get 45 plus in whatever it is. So bearing that in mind, if that's not really making sense to you, hopefully as I go through the 10 questions, that will become clearer for you. But if you are struggling with one particular type, and I'm not talking about the broader category, remember, I'm talking about a question within a question, that specific type, then either go through it, make sure you understand it yourself, feel free to comment and I will try and explain it to you as best as I can, or just keep watching videos where I've solved it before, asking people how they solve it, until you figure out a way where if I see this question again, I know exactly how to deal with this. And that is really the only way to do well in this exam. If you find that you understand as you go through the paper the kind of question types and broadly how to deal with it, but then in the actual exam, when you actually do the paper, you're confused, you're not sure how to do it, it just means you haven't gone deep enough, you haven't gone specific enough. So you've understood floor as a concept, but you haven't understood that you can't extrapolate from one piece of data, or that correlation and causation are different. You haven't understood one specific bit of information that they are testing, but that piece of knowledge is tested over and over and over again. So you really just need to figure out, as specific and as niche as you can, what is your pain point? What is the issue that you're having with that question? And I think you will find it is a repeated issue. And I think you will find as well that there is one method that you can just absolutely nail and get it right with. So let's start off with question 1 here. What we're looking at is classic, a main conclusion question. I think question 1 always tends to be a main conclusion question. Now, if you have watched all of my other videos and you've seen the way to solve a main conclusion one, I really hope by this point that this is one that takes you 30 seconds or less. I really don't feel like we should be getting main conclusion questions wrong. It's just, there's such an easy trick to it. Again, go and watch the other ones if you're not sure. But we're looking for sentences in the text which have either therefore, so, but, while, things that are announcing the point of this paragraph here. So let's read through. Throughout history, gold has been revered and used for expensive jewelry and ornamentation. So that's giving a bit of context as to what this passage is going to be talking about. We then say, but in the future, it will be prized for its practical uses rather than for its aesthetic appeal. You've noted that the word but comes out here. This is definitely going to be our main conclusion. It's refuting that first sentence of what gold has been typically used for. And then the following sentences, we would expect to prove this sentence here, why it's going to be prized for its practical use rather than for its aesthetic appeal. Do a quick skim through, just reading briefly, and I'll just summarize as I read. We found new properties of gold, in particular its electrical conductivity. Therefore, it's useful for this in particular because of certain features. As such, we should use this in devices because it's going to be highly reliable. So we'd expect it to be used in every modern electronic device in the future within 10 years, more than in jewelry. So yeah, pretty much exactly as we expected. A context sentence, the conclusion, and then proof of it. In main conclusion ones, make sure that you're finding the identical sentence out of the options, not even a tiny bit changed. So we can read through the options now. In the future, gold will be prized for its practical uses rather than for its aesthetic appeal. As you can see, that is identical. So we're going to be super happy with that. Super quick, nice and easy. This probably could have taken you like 5 seconds, honestly. So at this point, again, I would expect you to be super comfortable with this. If this is still giving you pain, if it's still giving you trouble, then please feel free to leave a comment and explain what you're finding tricky about it. But as I'm going to keep repeating, these questions that come up in the TSA are identical. They come up all the time. So if you're getting one of these types of questions wrong, you can guarantee you can find 7 or 8 other questions from past papers. Just go through every single one of them. Make sure you understand the method. Solve it that way, because you shouldn't be getting the same question wrong over and over. All right, guys, so we are moving on here to a problem-solving question. So we'll read through it first and then figure out what we're dealing with before we figure out how to solve it. So we've got a quiz consisting of 7 rounds. Let me just switch to a highlighter. 7 rounds, 20 questions, each question worth 1 point at the end of the quiz. But before any of the answers or scores are revealed, each team is allowed to select one of the rounds and the score for that round is tripled. In addition, the scores for the rounds immediately before and after the chosen round are doubled. The winning team at last week's quiz had the following scores. Winning team's final score is 136. Which round did we triple? Okay, so with some of these problem solving questions, it can be complex in that you have to create equations. Maybe you have to go 2 or 3 steps, but something like this, you can see it's a very simple set of rules. You've got a base score, and then you just basically have to apply the rules of tripling and doubling, and it tells you very clearly how to do it. So there's a process order here. So don't overcomplicate this. Just do what seems intuitive, which in this case is going to be to add up the scores before the tripling. So that'll be 14 plus 16, 30 plus 6 plus 20 plus 10 plus 18 plus 4. So what we're left with is going to be 88, and the final score was 136. So the difference here is the result of the tripling, essentially. So if we take the difference, then it is going to be 48. So we're looking for basically that by tripling one score and doubling 2, we've somehow got to the number 48. Now immediately I'm looking at my number of scores and I'm seeing high numbers, 16, 14, 20, 18. We know it's not going to be one of those bigger numbers. So just looking at it, we're thinking it's going to be round 3 or round 7, because you need to be able to triple and double numbers around it. So if you look at the options as well, round 7 is not even an option. So it's going to be round 3. I'm almost 100% sure. And in an exam, if I were in it myself, I'd personally just tick that off and move on. But let's just make sure that is correct. So we look at it and we think, okay, so that one's going to be tripled, which means to our existing score, we would add an additional 12. We would then double 20 and we'd double 16. Because they're the ones immediately surrounding the rounds. So that would be plus 20 plus 16. If we add that all up, it is 48, which is the difference. And we've proven that that is the correct answer. So there's nothing complicated going on here. Just follow the order, and just don't spend too long on this, really. It is one of those quick ones. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so we've got an underlying assumption question for question 3. So with underlying assumption, again, go and check out the other videos if you haven't done so already, but look for the conclusion, look for the argument leading up to that conclusion, and then find out of A to E which one we need to be true in order for that argument to hold. So I'm going to try and identify the main conclusion first. Just going to do a quick skim through. While change is inevitably difficult, communities should not be fearful about the loss of their traditional shopping areas. 2 things tell me that's the conclusion. First of all, while. Second of all, should. So those, again, are key kind of conclusion words that you see in the TSA. Just get used to it, really. So the argument for change is inevitably difficult, but we shouldn't be fearful about the loss of their traditional shopping areas. So we'll look around this now. So starting from the top. So high streets in general are in danger of disappearing, apparently. The decline began decades ago because of various trends, including more women working around outside the home and the development of supermarkets. So this so far is just kind of explaining why there's been a decline in the high street. We then have our conclusion sentence, which says, don't be scared. Now we're going to get the argument of why we shouldn't be scared, which is shopping is increasingly conducted via via the internet compared to traditional ways of shopping. The online model offers savings in terms of time and other resources while providing greater choice. So we're basically saying, don't be scared because shopping online has some benefits, and so we shouldn't be sad about it. So I think you can kind of guess what the assumption is going to be, which is that we don't really care about anything else. As long as the online shopping is good, we shouldn't really care that we don't have traditional shopping. So we'll look for something along those lines. Women in many countries do less shopping than in previous decades. That's more to do with this section here. The decline in central shopping districts is happening more quickly. Again, we don't really care. That's kind of proving this useless bit up here. It's difficult for governments to, as soon as you see governments, you're kind of out of there because there's no mention of government in the entire passage. The growth in online shopping will not threaten the profitability of large. As soon as you see something that's kind of irrelevant, like large supermarkets, is not mentioned. We don't care about the profits of these supermarkets. Why would that ever be an assumption, right? And then finally, traditional shopping areas serve no important purpose that cannot be satisfied by alternative shopping methods. That's perfect. That's brilliant because it's showing that our argument is correct, because we've said online shopping has all these benefits. Traditional shopping, it's got nothing else going for it, so why would we care? Okay, straight on to a flaw in the above argument question. Now, flaw in the argument is solved in exactly the same way as the assumption question. So conclusion, argument, and then find the flaw. So something that is wrong as opposed to needing to exist for it to be true. So if we look for the conclusion first, so next time an expensive sports car comes along while you're waiting at a pedestrian crossing, you can be sure that it won't stop. Now, we know that is because of so. Now, I actually wouldn't look for sometimes I look for the conclusion first. Most of the time I just read it through because I don't find it particularly confusing to do it that way either. But the reason I'm doing that is because I think it's good practice for your main conclusion questions as well. You can kind of double up and look for the main conclusion as well as the flaw. Okay, so let's find the argument for why we're saying if an expensive sports car comes along, you can be sure that it won't stop. Anything where it's like too certain, you know for sure that there's going to be something wrong with it. So I've always said that owners of expensive cars are less considerate drivers, and now a study has proved me right. Not the argument, it's just kind of a statement. The study showed that they are less likely to stop at a pedestrian crossing to allow someone to cross the road than drivers of less expensive cars. In fact, their likelihood to do so decreased by about 3%. So basically they're saying we did this test and we found a correlation. And then the next bit says previous studies have shown some link between wealth and self-regard. But this is really the kind of crux of it here. This is what's important. They're saying there's a likelihood, there's a correlation, therefore an expensive sports car won't stop. Again, please review other videos, but this is the most common flaw that comes up, and it will come up every single paper. It basically comes up every single time. So again, please don't be getting this wrong. This is very obviously, you can't take from a correlation, extrapolate out to being 100% certain. So that's what you're looking for. And if you look, this one, it assumes that just because drivers of expensive cars are less likely to stop, none of them will. Now, the reason I can find that so quickly, again, it comes down to it is the same question that comes up every time. It's almost the same wording. They just kind of change the topic here and there. Parallel arguments, another one that is really important that you use. A couple of things to really pay attention to. First, again, replace these things with X and Y. So you can only win an election. So X can only happen if you gain a majority of votes. If Y happens, you must have gained a majority of votes. You must have Y because you were named the winner in the election. Because X. So X happens if Y happens, you must have Y because X has happened. That's what we're looking for. So A, you are only promoted to be head teacher. So you only get X if you have taught for many years. If you have Y, you have taught for many years. So you are sure to be promoted. This is obviously wrong because this hasn't yet happened. This is looking forward into the future. So this is the other point I wanted to mention with parallel reasoning. It's not enough just to have the correct direction and the correct relationship between the two statements. You must also pay attention to the language. So you must have something because something has happened. So the conclusion is done. So therefore we can know that Y has happened. You can only go to the concert if you buy tickets or win them in the competition. So the next sentence should be, you must have bought tickets or won them in competition because you are at the concert. but this is talking about someone else, so this is definitely wrong. You can only get a high paying job if you study hard in school. So the next sentence should be, you must have studied hard in school because you have a high paying job. This is you are certain to. So this is wrong because, again, it hasn't yet happened. You can only apply for a loan from the bank or the credit union. There's not even a condition here. So that's going to be wrong. You are only eligible for the scholarship if you prove financial need. If Y, you have been declared eligible for the scholarship, so you must have proved financial need. So you must have had Y because X has already happened, declared eligible, right? So that is great. That's wonderful. We're going to move on. Okay, so another problem-solving question here. So we'll read through it first and then figure out what we need to be using in terms of method and skill. So we've got two different mixtures of apple juice and orange juice. One is this ratio, one is this ratio. And we want to use these two to make 6 liters of juice with equal ratios of orange juice and apple juice. How much of mixture 2? Again, this question comes up constantly, like this ratio question. It comes up with like paint. Sometimes it comes up with like, different amounts of sugar, salt, baking ingredients, whatever. But if this is tripping you up, this kind of ratio question, recognize that it is ratio questions that's kind of tripping you up. Figure out a method, go over it again and again, and then just kind of memorize it and apply. So the way that I would usually do this, it's pretty straightforward, but we want 6 liters of overall liquid in the end. And of that, we want 3 liters to be of apple, and we want 3 liters to be of orange. So we've been given 2 concentrations of apple juice and orange juice so far. So if we just take the simplest case, which would be if we had 1 liter of each, and you can, because it's going to be, because it's percentages, you can just kind of look at it like 40 plus 70, because it's like 400 milliliters plus 700 milliliters of apple juice. So I'll literally just add it. And I go, with the initial mixture, it's going to be 110 to 90. And because we want it to be equal, essentially we want to get it to 300 to 300, or alternatively 150 to 150, and then just double. So knowing that, we can see that if we add 40 here and we add 60 here, we're going to end up at that. And this fits quite nicely into mixture 1. So we basically want twice as much of mixture 1 as we do of mixture 2. And then we want this twice to make 6 liters. So we want total 2 liters of mixture 2. So there's no real method except that just don't kind of try to like create lots of equations and go too crazy with this sort of stuff. You can just straightforward just add it up, especially when you're dealing with such small numbers and like really basic ratios. You just whatever's easiest, that you don't waste time and that you're still certain in your answer. Okay, so another problem-solving question here. So here we've got the extension numbers needed to contact 8 different departments in a university, depending on whether the caller is calling as a student, parent, lecturer, journalist, or researcher. The appropriate numbers are shown below. So we've got a bunch of different numbers here. And then Fran is a lecturer and regularly needs to contact all of the departments in the university. So that's these. How many of this extension numbers are never needed by Fran? And then we've got some options here. Now, Fran recognize this as an elimination question, by the way. So you need to identify the correct column and then cut as needed. So Fran's a lecturer. So we're interested in this column here. So that means she contacts all of the departments, which means we are basically interested in all of these numbers here. As you can see, some are repeated. 661's repeated, 117's repeated, 232, 387. So the numbers that she is using are 661, 117, 387, 232. Okay, so she's using these 4 numbers. Now we need to figure out what other ones come out in different columns that do not appear in her set of numbers. So the easiest way to do this is just really 239, 558. Is there a quicker way to do this? I don't know. I think it doesn't take too long to do it this way anyway, so I'm not going to bother trying to figure out a new method for it. Okay, cool. So it's actually just the 2 numbers that don't come up, so the answer is C. So again, with these kind of questions, I don't think you're really going to struggle with much in this if you understand the question clearly. It's more about are you sure you're looking for the right thing? But then beyond that, I mean, how long did that take? Like 30 seconds? So again, just be quick with it. Don't overcomplicate it. Okay, here we've got a principle question. So with a principle question, it's important to understand what is the kind of order of the argument. What are we linking together? Where is the root argument coming from? So with this one, it's really important to read, unlike the ones that I've been skimming, like with the flaw and the assumption and the main conclusion ones where you can just go whoosh and sort of, skip through it. With the principle and the parallel argument ones, you've got to read every single word. There's no shortcut there. So let's go from the top here. So bicycle owners have a duty to have their bicycles maintained properly. Why? This is to ensure the safety both of the rider and of other road users. If an injury is caused to another person as a result of a failure to maintain a bicycle properly, then the injured person should be entitled to compensation. So once I've read that, I've kind of broadly split it up into how my brain likes to categorize this. And then I'm thinking about, okay, what is the argument here? So they're saying bicycles should be maintained properly. If it isn't, and then it causes injury, then the owner of the bike should pay the injured party. So there's a couple of things I'm going to note there. It's the relationship between a third party and the owner of something. And then its failure to maintain leads to the other person's the owner's need to pay. So if we look at A, skiers injured while skiing off the official ski run should be entitled to compensation from the manufacturer of the skis. So what's missing there, which makes this wrong, is going to be lack of maintenance. So there has to be something about the ski manufacturer didn't maintain its skis or something. A passenger on a train who is injured tripping over luggage not put in the luggage rack should be entitled to compensation from the train company. Now, I like that there's a third party being injured by something that wasn't their fault. However, in this case, they're saying compensation should come from the train company. According to what's outlined in this argument, it should actually be compensation from the luggage owner. So that's also wrong. A child injured while playing on a broken swing in a park should be entitled to compensation from the park owner. So that's got all the elements. A broken swing due to lack of maintenance is being paid a third-party injury, a child playing on it, and compensation from the owner, which is the park owner. So that one is going to be correct. Let's look at the other two just in case. So a householder scalded when pouring water from a kettle should be entitled to compensation from the manufacturer of the kettle. We've got the manufacturer, we've got a third party. We do not, in fact, have a poor maintenance. And also, actually, in this case, the householder is technically the owner of the kettle, so it doesn't really make sense either. So people who eat too many biscuits and damage their health should be entitled to compensation from the shop which sold the biscuits. Some of this stuff is obviously ridiculous, right? Like these two are clearly ridiculous. So don't be afraid to think of it as what a ridiculous statement. Why would they even suggest that that is the case? Okay, we've got weakening the argument. Now, again, with weakening the argument, it's the same structure, the same thing that you're looking for as flaw and assumption. Main conclusion, find the argument, and then weaken it out of the options. In this case, you do have to read these options really carefully. But again, the points that they use to weaken arguments are so repetitive. If you know one, you know them all, really. So let's find the main conclusion first. So despite ranking top of gender equality list, Sweden is like practically every other country in terms of having an unequal division of labour for unpaid housework. That's just like a context point. Perpetuating stereotypes about who should be responsible for cleaning tasks. Women still perform more domestic chores than their male partners. So this is some data we're looking at is, still unfair. To address this enduring sexism about women's work, Sweden has recently implemented a tax policy through which the government pays half of the bill when households employ a cleaner. This policy has been a success. Couples that hired a cleaner because of the subsidy report fewer arguments over housework, and the female partners have been able to devote a significant number of Okay, I think the rest of that doesn't matter. The point is this policy has been a success is our conclusion. And how do we know that this policy has been a success? Well, it's basically saying that Sweden female partners have been able to devote significant number of additional hours per month to their own paid employment. So what are we overcoming here is the unequal division of labour for unpaid housework and the perpetuating stereotype about who should be responsible for cleaning. Okay, so this was the problem that was identified. the stereotype and, unequal division of labor. We then introduced this bill, which has been a success because female partners have now been working for their own paid employment. So what's going to weaken this argument? Again, there's nothing that I can really guess from this, to be honest. It's not it's not so clear cut as that. So we'll look at the options. Swedish women do fewer hours of housework a week on average than women in many other countries. That is irrelevant because that doesn't really explain why this means a policy has been a success or a failure. If it's successful, then women are cleaning less. That's what we're looking for. Many women enjoy doing housework. Again, not very relevant. Sweden has a long-standing policy of paid paternity leave for fathers. Again, we're not caring about fathers right now. Most of the cleaners hired because of the subsidy are women. So there's your weakening of the argument. We're saying that policy has been a success at overturning the stereotype of who should have more cleaning tasks and women performing more than men. But if the case is that cleaners are being hired and they're still women, then that kind of ruins the point of it. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you've got any comments or questions, please leave one down below and I'll get back to you.